All right, good morning. It is Friday. Should I not say it's Friday in October?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Friday in October. My daughter this morning reminded me. She said
Oh,
it's Friday the 13th.
yes, that's
So
right.
that means we're in for a perfect show.
That's right. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? But it's the Dev Talk Show. I'm here with my co-host Rich Ross, and it's Friday, and we happen to be in the Southeast Pennsylvania area where I think it's been gorgeous the last couple of days, just a little
Yeah,
crisp. But I like the crisp autumn and spring where it's either coming out of the heat or going into it, and it's just gorgeous right now. I love it.
perfect time of year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So before we get started today, a couple quick things to talk about. For example, what else are you doing besides coding, Rich?
There's a segue.
Yeah.
So I think we've both been playing a little bit of Forza Motorsports because that
Yep.
came out early this week,
Yep.
midnight on Tuesday, as it were. So it was already ready to go. You just had to, if you were up, you could play it. Um, I've been so what's interesting is that because Chris and I are both friends on Xbox, we get to be rivals when it comes
Yep.
to racing. So Forza, if you don't know, Forza Motorsports is the for the Xbox, it is their racing franchise essentially. So there's Motorsports, which is all the track racing, and then there's Horizons, which is like the open world, with various tracks and racing activities along the way. But Motorsports is the one that is my favorite of the two, and whenever it comes out, Chris and I go back and forth, beating each other's times and realizing there's no way I can get past that, and all of a sudden I'm a half second quicker. So
Oh gosh, I know. There were times in a previous Forza where I would look at a new lap time and say, where am I going to find a second and a half? And then or whatever. And so I think
yeah,
right now, so there's all kinds of great racing. There's that we could race together. There's asynchronous racing with what they call it rivals. And I love how it's asynchronous because when you're busy, it's nice to just be able to go on and say like, oh, look, I got a new lap time to beat. And puts
yeah,
the ghost up. And what I love about that too is that we even get to talk about how I have no idea. It's the same part where you're just pulling way ahead. I have no idea how you're getting around that turn. So it's a lot of
yeah.
fun.
So we get to learn a little bit from each other by doing that. The
Yeah.
one thing we have to decide, and if and don't have to do it here unless you know off the top of your head, but we need to pick a track, right? That we can both say, hey, this is the one where we're going to kind of focus, because there's a couple different versions. There's all the tracks
Yep.
with all the different car levels, and then there's the featured one that kind of
Yep.
rotates around every week. That's great. We can certainly do that, but it'd be great for us to say, hey, let's focus on this track and figure out, and get our best times on that. So,
Yeah. Oh, there's at least I want to say there's like 100 rivals tracks. So certainly,
okay.
and there's that whole section where they're the different classes of cars. So that's
Yes.
where you can like really tinker up to the limit on a car, and so it's fun stuff. So hopefully you've all gotten to join us. We're just a few minutes in. We only have an hour till stand up. So the headline today, we predicted it last week. .NET 8 release candidate 2 is here.
Yep.
It did release that day. It was discussed on
Community
the
stand-up.
.NET, on the .NET community stand up. So it kind of went pretty much as predicted. And I switched us to the screen, but I don't actually have the screen. So there we go. That was just my fault for not sharing it. I have our YouTube video. Whoops. And then I went ahead and added some stuff. I have our YouTube video up. So what that means for those of you watching is it means I'm going to try to update right down below if you're watching live. And if you're watching later, then check the description out as we talk about some of these things. I want to make sure you all get a link to the stand-up, the community stand-up. So did you get to watch any of that?
I did. I got about 35, 40 minutes into it. There's a lot of things that Dan and team revealed. Lots of things that Still some work to do. It's not finished yet. So, but it's
Right.
close.
Right. So let's get a view here so everyone can see. So here it is. Here it is. We've got Jeremy Lickness, McKinnon, Buck, Dan Roth, John Galloway, going over the community links, which is one of John's favorite things. I feel like I should ask John, maybe, do you want to add the show to the community? I know he would do it. I've met John. He's a really cool guy. I've met him at MVP Summit.
Right.
And he often runs the community stand-up, but not always. Like, he's often kind of like the host. To say he runs it, he's, really what he does is he does this fantastic job of facilitating and getting the most out of the guest and really taking the developer point of view into the show. But he loves to do these community links. And so, yeah, there was a lot of discussion here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I get this into our show notes. Frankly, you should watch it.
Definitely recommend.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that on a monthly basis, because the community stand up is once a month, or is that a weekly?
I think it's kind of like, I think the answer is sort of yes.
Okay.
Because if we go take a look at the videos, we'll see. So, the .NET, like, for example, here's an on .NET Live that's coming soon, and I'm not 100% sure if John's going to be there, but this was 9 days ago, and it was an ASP.NET community stand-up, and I think it's basically, hey, when we can get folks who are available, or at the same time, like here was one 2 weeks ago. It might be weekly, frankly.
Okay.
So, or I think it like weekly-ish.
Yep.
That was a great day to do it, so they did it. So what does that mean for us? What it means is I'm going to go ahead and quickly open Visual Studio Installer so folks can see this. A lot of you folks who are watching are fans of Philly.net, and tomorrow is Philly.net Code Camp. First one in a little while, and first in-person one in a little while. A return to our location in Malvern, and it's pretty cool. I'm certainly talking about Blazor tomorrow, and so what do you need to get started with the release candidate? And one of the things that you need, if you want to use Visual Studio, is you need Visual Studio Enterprise 2022 Preview, and you need 17.8.0 Preview 3. Okay, so that, and when you install that, I did, I think I showed on an earlier show, I don't know if I did it live or didn't do it live, using WinGet to grab the SDK. If you run the installer, it installs it. We might have done that live. I don't remember. So. If you use the installer, it installs it. So
awesome.
So that means I can say, just in case you don't know, some people don't know these things about, and then of course, some people don't know that you can say .NET. I must do it a lot because the tip is always saying, like, is this what you want to run? And here it is. We'll have to do a show about eliminating older SDKs.
That'd be fun once a new one comes out.
I think we meant to do that show because I can tell you that I added these older out of support SDKs for the express purpose of using the .NET uninstall tool.
Nice.
Which may be here. I forget. It might be installed. It might not be installed. I was going to show it, and then you know what happened? I think we got to talking about something else, and so they're just sitting on the machines. But we'll look at that when it comes out. So we have our new RC, and we have Visual Studio installers updated, but our website's on the older version. So we definitely need to update it. And that's going to come over time. If you watch the show, you'll see that we're taking baby steps towards updating the Dev Talk Show website. And I think, first of all, a lot of you noticed that it's mostly a static site, but we built our first Blazor component last time. and got that going. So what I'm going to do is let me get Visual Studio launched, and we can look at where the site is. And then I'd also like to just get some of your thoughts on what's happening in Blazor in .NET 8. And to do that, we are going to tool around the documentation. So, number one, first thing to know, learn.microsoft.com is the place for docs. It's the place for training modules. It's got it's the credentials. In other words, we used to call them certificates. I'm not 100% sure if credentials stands for many different things now. I'm not 100% sure, but this is the main site for that. There's also something a lot of people don't know about, this Q&A forums. I don't think a lot of people know about these. I could go to .NET, and here's a set of questions and answers, and I can maybe filter it a little bit. Like, let me browse the .NET tags, and I mean, here I am. I could pick ASP.NET, so let's pick that. And so, actually, there was a Blazor one. So let's go pick Blazor. And these are just the questions that are tagged specifically for Blazor. And we could start, you can ask questions. You can help.
Oh,
it's pretty cool. So this is all at learn.microsoft.com.
Yeah.
I'm going to click on documentation. I'm trying to find ASP.NET. I'm not sure. Oh, ASP.NET Core. So this is what I was looking for. I would say there's two times that you kind of come here. One is you just have, like, for lack of a better term, like regular .NET questions.
Okay.
And that's all covered here in .NET. I think if I zoom in this way, I can still use the .NET MAUI is covered in its own section, and ASP.NET Core has its own section. So if I click on ASP.NET Core, it's a little bit of work to get here. And then you kind of just get into the documentation just by sort of clicking now. So if I say, like, interactive client-side Blazor apps, I'm just going to click overview, and this is going to drop me in a pretty good spot. And I want to talk a little bit about how to navigate this so that folks watching will have a good sense of hey, I want to learn more, and they'll be able to do so, I think. So first of all, I'm going to set us to ASP.NET Core 8. Yep.
Yeah, the docs are up there, but they're still defaulting to the old one because it's not. It's the latest, right? 7's the latest.
Yep. I am super impressed with how much is in here, considering it's a preview build. They're certainly cranking to try to have this totally ready. Yeah.
Just a comment. I know people have commented in the chat in the past and on the web or on YouTube as the videos get pushed up there. But I must. It looks so much better in 1080p. It looks just noticeably different in what I'm seeing from the screen here.
Oh, great!
I didn't realize how bad it was before.
Awesome. So. No, I'm glad. So yeah, that's the thing is, as some folks might have seen, that we've struggled a little bit with resolution. I think maybe that is solved now. I'm glad that it's looking good. So nice thing is matching your screen resolution to the stream resolution. Like, what a concept. We used to do it when we streamed the show ourselves in OBS. And it's because I had this whole producer's checklist that I ran down before every show. It was like a mission control checklist. And StreamYard, I have to admit, it got a little too easy to just, okay, let's go.
Right. Hit the button.
Yeah, let's hit the button. Let's go. So navigating this, we can see, we talked last time or a previous time about the 3 different major frameworks. That's not counting API development. This is just for websites. Razor Pages is a front-end framework that is page-centric. MVC is a model view controller-centric framework. Not that you can't use models in these other 2 platforms. And then Blazor, which is, I think, what everybody's excited about. So when you're here in the documentation, you can scroll down to Blazor, and that's where we're going to find most of this stuff. I'm going to keep trying to, I hope I remember where a lot of this stuff is, because I can tell you that even as I was looking around for it, there were plenty of times where I was like, where is this again? And that drove me a little batty. So the number one thing I want to talk about, I think, and I don't have a good slide or anything for this. So instead, let me click on hosting models because that's going to show us this.
Yeah.
This is actually not the most important thing about ASP.NET Core 8 and Blazor, in my opinion. I think if there was a headline for it, I think the headline is static server rendered is here and it's default.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of a sea change for Blazor. However, if I click on this hosting models page, which just probably is just, it's just being updated, and I don't know if this is the place that they want to drive this home. We still see Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, Blazor Hybrid, and it's because maybe without even thinking about it, we always had to make a choice: Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And that was even a choice you had to make whether you use the templates or not. Obviously, a lot of us use the templates and we just go with what's in there. But even if you built it yourself from scratch, which is something you can do, you still had to pick. If your app was mostly static without a lot of interactivity, you were still buying into it shipping in .NET DLLs with Blazor WebAssembly, or it's staying on the server and being updated. So I wanted to just show real quick those two models because there's a really nice picture here. Blazor Server basically says there's Razor components that are sitting in ASP.NET Core being hosted on a server. Those are rendered and sent down to your browser. And we always talk about the DOM. The DOM is rendering them, blah, blah, blah. But now it's time for an update. Something's changed, and we don't want a page refresh. We want it to update. We want it to be this awesome, modern-looking, boom, here it just happened. So a SignalR circuit is established that that does that update.
Yep. And for the acronym police, DOM is the document object model for the HTML page that you're hosting into.
Right.
We get a lot of people of all different backgrounds here, so many of you may know that, but for those who are new and don't.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So sometimes when we slow down for folks, I know, but I think a lot of folks know that we're slowing down for a reason, and then because we can certainly zoom ahead when we need to. So the other model, and I got to admit, when Blazor hit the scene and everybody was seeing it for the first time, people were super excited about this. And in fact, to the point that I don't know how many times on this show I made the point of like, it's kind of overtaking the thing, which to me is component-based development. I was really excited about ASP.NET having a component-based framework, considering that so many popular SPA frameworks had totally bought into components, Angular, React, Vue, and even newer kids on the block just bought into that model. But we didn't have that model in .NET. So Blazor WebAssembly basically says we'll compile your app to a .NET assembly, and then using WebAssembly down in the DOM in the browser, it can execute because basically there is a WebAssembly version of the .NET runtime. I think I'm mostly saying that right. And then your code goes down as a .NET DLL and it just runs it.
Yeah, I'm going and maybe I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, but I'm harking back to .NET Framework. Didn't we have some kind of component capabilities there?
Well, if we're thinking about like ASP.NET Web Forms,
yeah,
you could build your own server controls.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Don't
Yeah.
want to dive in further, but for those who are keeping us honest, I know there was that, and there were the page views that you had in MVC that you could do that were little snippets of HTML that you could push to the page, right? So this
Partial
is
views,
getting us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, partial views in MVC,
Partial views,
master pages and shared pages in ASP.NET Web Forms, server controls in Web Forms, and also tag helpers in MVC.
Oh yeah. So helping you when you write your HTML.
Those were cool little things. In fact, you kind of see the inspiration. You build a little tag helper, it takes some attributes, and then it renders some HTML. It's like, well, that's what Razor components do now. They're just so much more powerful.
Yes, exactly. This is like the culmination or the of how we got here. So
yeah,
cool.
In case you haven't heard from a previous show, the official name of a component is a Razor component. So when you're tooling around the VS IDE or code and you just sitting there going, I want to make a new Blazor component. I don't want one of these Razor components. I'm not in Razor pages. The official name of a component is a Razor component. That said, even in this documentation, they will use the term components, and sometimes they will say things like, sometimes called Blazor components. So they recognize that the word Blazor is the thing that has our attention. What I want to do, though, is switch away from talking about that, because if I move down the documentation, so I got to open Blazor and I move to components. This is where I think we really get what's happened. This is really the big deal in ASP.NET Core 8 is render modes. To me, this is the big sea change. This is what's, some will use the term revolutionize. I don't know that I want to be that. I don't know if that's hyperbole, but every component, that's a Razor component in a Blazor web app, because now we technically only have one project type. It used to, the code name of sorts was Blazor United. We just have a Blazor web app. Blazor is Blazor. Adopts a render mode, which determines its hosting model, where it's rendered, and whether or not it's interactive. So we just talked about the hosting models that we're all familiar with, Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly. But it turns out there's a layer that's a foundation underneath that. If this was a pyramid, and it'd be great to have a slide for tomorrow, the render mode. This is the foundation, right? And what's interesting now is you're going to see some words repeated. This is a little unfortunate because I think it means the repeating of words makes it confusing. If you do nothing more than create a Blazor web app, and as you'll see when we do file new project, or if you're using the .NET CLI, you say, I just want a Blazor web app and I don't want all the bells and whistles. I'm not going to check very many of these interactivity boxes, whatever those are. Like, let's say you're brand new to it. You are going to get the default, which is static render mode that provides static server rendering that happens on the server. And they point out is not interactive.
Right.
So if you're almost familiar, go ahead.
Almost like a classic way of doing a web application.
Yeah. And you might be blown away by that, by saying like, whoa, what's happening? It's all stripped down. But just like, wow, this is probably dating me. Just like when you went and said to the dealer, I just want the car stripped.
Oh, wow.
That's going back a ways, right?
No air, no power windows.
Nothing no radio, none of that. Because you were going to do it yourself, maybe. You were going to put in your own radio. So just like that, when you start a new Blazor web app and you say, I don't want interactivity, that's essentially what you're saying. We'll see that when we file a new project real quick. You're getting static server rendering, and you're going to see some other terms thrown around here. I think what the documentation is telling me is the team is trying to settle on terms, but it's been a long year. People like Dan Roth have given a lot of presentations that you may still go find, and it's hard to break habits. So, people on YouTube are using these terms. You will see server-side rendering. You will see that term used a lot. You'll see static server rendering. You'll see server render mode. I'm seeing people use all those terms. So it all means the same thing.
Okay.
Why is that important? Well, it turns out that our friend, I'm going to pick on React. I think it's fair to say that React is extremely popular and still in a lot of people's tool bags, or they can't wait to go learn it or whatever. Quite a while back, React brought, I don't know how long ago, brought server-side rendering to the game because I think like everything that seems to happen in our industry, client-side rendering became super popular. Like, let's get all this down on the browser with JavaScript. It makes our site so much more, I don't want to say performant, but we can handle more viewers, more people, because our server's just saying, okay, here's a bunch of code, knock yourself out, browser.
Right.
But there's like a scale that we're constantly balancing. If you send too much to the browser, the experience begins to diminish a little bit. There's something special about handing the browser HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and maybe even as little JavaScript as possible, because the browser renders HTML and CSS so fast.
Yeah.
There's something special about having the server render an update, so that instead of saying to the browser, okay, here's the data you wanted, and then the JavaScript's like, well, now hold on, let me run some code to figure out what I do with this data, and then what do I render, and let me update the shadow DOM, and let me update the DOM, and blah, blah, blah. Instead, it's just like, here's the fragment, pop it in.
Yeah. Nice.
It's become popular outside of ASP.NET, and so now we have it in ASP.NET. We have it with static server rendering. So I'll run through these because it's probably time to look at a little bit of code.
Mm-hmm.
We now are using the term interactive server to mean a component that is rendered using the Blazor server model. That's the SignalR circuit we just talked about. We saw code previously that would say render mode.server. They have changed that enum to say interactive server because they recognize some confusion between static server rendering, server-side rendering, and interactive server. By the same token, what we called Blazor WebAssembly, it's still Blazor WebAssembly, is that the render mode is interactive WebAssembly. We are saying this component has a little bit of connectivity. It's going to get updates. So we're going to use WebAssembly to perform those updates. And the last one, interactive auto, which is exciting, and this is probably where the Blazor United term came from, is that what happens is the application recognizes that you don't have the WebAssembly cached on your machine. Therefore, it renders it using Blazor server. The reasoning is that you get a fast update because the server is ready to go. Bam, there's your fragment. And it starts streaming down the WebAssembly version of your site. And so if you were to refresh the page, or come back later and it hasn't changed, you would now get interactive updates client side, which supposedly is faster because it's already there. It's already on your machine. And I only say supposedly because I haven't benchmarked any of this. So.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, question.
No, so basically, that kind of sums up all the various modes we've had in one project, right? Or I'm sorry, in one solution. They're not in one. We'll see in a minute. They're not all in one project file. But if we specify nothing, it's the classic way we've done applications all along. If we want some kind of interactivity, we've got to specify a render mode, and it's either interactive server, interactive WebAssembly, or no, I'm blanking on the last one. The one that's both.
Yeah, auto, right?
Auto. There you go.
And auto was
interactive auto.
I feel like that was when people who were plugged in, paying attention, they've been paying attention for the last year, that's not to shame anybody. It's perfectly fine to go to work every day and know that something's coming and say, I don't really have time to look at it. I'll look at it when it GAs. That's totally fine. So I'm certainly not trying to make anybody feel different, but you're here because we're close.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been following along, you have this is probably what people thought of as Blazor United.
Formerly known as,
which really, I think the team made a very good choice in just recognizing that, like, this is just Blazor now. Let's not confuse it with another term. I think that was a smart move. So here we are in Visual Studio 17.8.3 preview. We will bring up our site in a moment, but for now, let's go ahead and see what the new project experience. Once again, we've done that a lot on this show lately, but hey, we're coming down to release, right?
Yep.
That if I search for templates, what does my experience look like? We'll even take a look at this in the CLI as well, because folks who might be on Linux and Mac. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. I did not. Okay, this is what I want to do. I want to look through them. This is the one. This is it. This is Blazor Web App. This is the thing that's intended for .NET 8. In fact, I believe it is the only template in .NET 8, and we'll see what that means. If we start scrolling down at some of the other ones, we're going to see, well, here's a Blazor WebAssembly standalone app. Like, that's a heck of a mouthful, but it means Blazor WebAssembly. It's got the sample pages in it, the infamous counter of Doom,
Yeah. And weather.
and the weather, right? And then we have Blazor WebAssembly empty, which is to say, like, I don't need that stuff. Get it out of here. Well, that they basically discovered, why are we making these different templates? We'll see that in a moment. Blazor server app, Blazor server app empty. You can drop into Maui's Blazor hybrid, and so on. So if I were to pick one of these, just for sake of argument, what we're going to see, I believe, is that I can't pick .NET 8.
Oh. Okay.
Not for the template.
Right. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. So, and that might scare people to be like, wait a second, what if I adopted a Blazor server app, .NET 6, long-term support, long-term support's long, but it's, it's not forever. Oh my gosh. One of the things I think we'll try to tackle on this show, we're not going to be able to do it today, is I've kind of come to a little bit of a conclusion that it's really important to look at the code behind these templates this time. Where in the past I used to just be like, well, whatever, let's just go.
Right.
It's fine. Whatever, it's fine. And I've changed my mind, because now that we have one Blazor, it's going to be important when you do have to go from your Blazor server or Blazor WebAssembly .NET 5, .NET 6, whatever it is that you're using, .NET 7 app, you're going to have to make this shift. And when you do it, there are going to be some code changes. They're not bad. In fact, if anything, code's getting deleted, which is fantastic. But there's a change. So I think in some respects, that's going to take some getting used to. Let's do file new project again, because let's concentrate on what we want to see here, which is what we came here for. This is what everybody came here for. Hopefully they don't feel like we waited too long. Blazor web app. This is it. This is the thing. And because we are just messing around today, I'm going to call it Blazor app RC2. And we'll just leave this as is. A lot of people know that I like to do this and get off on a good foot by having a solution with a separate project. But well, let's just do it.
So it's funny, you picked the name of a project template that is probably the least descriptive of any of the other templates that were in there. Right.
A little concerning to me.
Sure.
That discoverability is an issue when somebody types Blazor and sees all this other stuff and says, oh, I want WebAssembly.
Right.
It's like, well,
sure. I think yeah. But I mean, those are, let's move on. We'll see if that comment needs to be made. Okay.
So now I can pick preview. In fact, I can only pick 8.
Exactly. And I think that's the distinction, right? Somebody's going to come into one of those other ones and say, where's my 8, right? This should be 8RC. And you really have to, if you want to go the 8 path, that's really the only template you need to go. And because of some of the things that Chris, you just showed around the interactivity modes.
Right. Yep. That's exactly it. Because it really is a change where we now have decoupled the interactivity from the app in a way where previously, when you made the Blazor server or Blazor WebAssembly choice, number one, you had to make it. You didn't have it. You had to pick one. And second, it was embedded into the DNA of your app. People were doing a lot of fancy things. I don't know if you tried it. People were doing fancy things for their app to be both Blazor server and Blazor WebAssembly ready. But
I didn't go that path. But
I didn't either.
Some videos definitely, just to check out and see what was there.
Yeah, I didn't either. Some people did that. Now we have both, and we have them from the beginning. So both isn't even right. It's just Blazor, and that it's hard to get. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. I've gotten a lot better over this last summer that we've just been cranking.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to show this. You'll see why that's an important distinction, right? It's a web app, right? And you can sprinkle interactivity where you need to.
Yep. Dan covers this fantastic in the show, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, because you could always go watch that as well. But we now have authentication is now starting to get built into the template. In the past, we didn't quite have it yet. I was beginning to work. I actually did work since our last show. I did a little bit of time into figuring out how to get identity into it, and we played
Nice.
around with that, but we played around in .NET 7.
Okay. Okay.
We played around
Right.
with identity in .NET 7 because .NET 7 and previously identity has this whole scaffolding, and you saw it come up, and it basically like led you by the nose to say like, hey, if you want to have more authentication types, go implement it, and we did all that. We are not going to look at this today, but I think it is right for a future show.
Mm-hmm.
Blazor in ASP.NET Core 8, in ASP.NET Core 7 and previously, if you wanted login, you basically were dropping to Razor pages. So the login identity stuff was all Razor page based. And then your Blazor components that were pages were routed differently. It all worked together just fine. You didn't even notice the difference if you were a user. But as a developer, you're kind of maintaining some Razor. So there's a whole Blazor UI component, identity components now that enable that experience, but enable it 100% through Blazor. You don't have to drop back to Razor pages.
Gotcha. Oh, that's
I'm
cool.
very interested to take a look at that, because there are other issues that have nothing to do with Blazor or SPAs that are being debated in the community over SPAs and security.
Yeah. There's all and I'm sure I know you've shared them with me, but you've shared links to that SPA security conversation in the past.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to talk about in the future. But like right now, there's definitely a lot of overlap in what we're talking about and what we're seeing talked about on the web. But we're at the beginning of this. I feel like it's a great branch out for the show to say like, well, now let's really dive in on identity now, and not just how to do it, but practices, because this is security. We got to make sure we're doing it right.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I want to address a question. We have a question from Romfos. Thank you for being here this morning.
Yep.
I'm not 100% sure.
I mean,
I'm
it
not.
looks like it's under from the documentation, and I'll drop a link so you can see what I'm looking at. It looks like it's part of the preview APIs.
Okay. Oh,
Under
interesting.
.NET.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to bring up. I think this is what you're talking about, and the answer,
Yeah.
the other part of the question that's not listed here is, did you try it? No.
No, I'll be honest, I'm seeing this for the first time.
Yeah.
Um,
So this is a .NET Designs, and we've been shipping .NET in the browser via WebAssembly since the introduction of Blazor 3. During that initial release, we decided to avoid adding TFM for the browser. And so
do you know what TFM is? Because I'm stuck at that point.
in this particular case, I agree with you that I'm like, not sure yet, but look at this. This makes you wonder, like, is this something that's coming? So it makes me wonder, like, once I figure out what the acronym stands for, am I going to be like, oh yeah, or am I going to told, no, that's not, obviously not it. Didn't get the answer today.
Oh, hang on. Target framework moniker.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
Bing
Okay.
chat
So,
to the rescue.
well, thank you. So the target framework monitor, let me bring up another solution here.
It's used to specify the target platform version for a .NET project.
Yeah. So let me bring that up, because we used to have more of them in the early days of .NET Core, to the point that I've actually allowed myself to forget a lot about them. But let's take a look. If I edit project file, this is the project we worked on last time. Here we go. Just .NET 8. That's it.
Right.
If I want to say maybe my memory's failing, that in the early days of .NET Core, there would be this .NET app moniker and a .NET web moniker and a class lib moniker. I want to say that was the case, but like I said, when we got to .NET 5 and kind of got to walk away from it, I allowed myself to forget about it. So we can see here that even though this is a web project, that the moniker is still .NET 8.
Mm-hmm.
And if I created a console project, the moniker would still be .NET 8, which is cool. What happens is that we inform our tooling that we're a website. The project SDK is more of a help for MS Build to say like, hey, oh, by the way, this is a web project. What you're producing here, and .NET and MS Build knows what to do with that. And I'm glad MS Build knows, because I've allowed myself to not pay too much attention to that. I do like to know what I need to know. I'm not the kind of person that doesn't want to know anymore, but sometimes you just go, I'm out of time. Yeah. We're going to leave authentication alone for now. Here we're picking interactivity type. So from here, if I want it to be the static render mode, server-side rendering, I would just say none.
Yeah.
If I want, yeah, go ahead.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If I want to adopt Blazor server for my components, I pick server. WebAssembly, pick WebAssembly. Auto, pick auto.
Okay.
There's no longer an empty web project because I can make it empty just like this.
Nice.
And you even get a different reaction if you pick global or per component. You get a different outcome. So depending on what you pick, you get I shouldn't have said vastly. You get different code, and that's what I want to dive into, because I think, unlike other versions of Blazor, it's going to be important to know what the differences are so that you can make changes.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part, right? You're not setting yourself up to fail by making a choice here that you can't override or make a design decision and say, oh, this really does need to be, WebAssembly versus server for these pages or for this project.
Yeah. We actually, with what we've built so far, we can do none with what we've built so far for the .NET for the website.
There's very little. There's none activity, as it were, or interactivity. Right.
I think what's cool is that this has given me a lot of ideas for interactivity. I'm not going to sit here and say they're all going to be the most useful things, but I think we could probably have our site have a little comment form, because that will let us to show off some other features like enhanced navigation, which I'm not sure we'll see today, but maybe we will.
Maybe authentication.
Yeah, and definitely authentication, definitely. So it was funny because, like I said, I wasn't sure what was going to make it into GA, and I said, well, I'd better get familiar with I want to get familiar with this whole Razor Pages scaffolding for identity, because I'm going to want to add it to our app. And now that they've shipped Blazor UI identity components, I go, oh, well, looks like those are what I'm going to want to pick up. So we'll do that, and we'll look at it on the show. So, all right, let's create this app and take a look. We'll try to go over some things here. Look at Program CS. So, because I did not pick an interactivity model,
right?
This is all we get. Add Razor components and use static files and map the Razor components, and that's it. What does this do? In fact, I feel like this seems so, my opinion, so far less magical than before. Like, you can follow along what's happening here without knowing what each of these methods do, like under the covers.
Magical is in sleight of hand. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Agreed.
If we went and looked at older projects, there's a lot of like builder services do this, and you go, I don't know what that does. So there's a service that does server-side rendering of Razor components. It's added. It's added. Done. We're mapping. So we have a built-in router, And all this extension method does is say like, well, let's look at everything in the app project and let's go map it up. And I mean, that's it. That's how it works. So like if I can't navigate to that, but what I can do is I can go to components, app.razor, and app.razor has a routes component. And so I think what it does is it digs in there. And this is the one thing that might feel a little bit like magic, is the router component takes an assembly. And so we just hand it ourselves.
Okay.
And we say, okay, find the Razor components that have route mappings, which is that page directive, and set it up so the website acts like a website, even though it's technically just a bunch of components technically. In the past, pages used to be sitting in its own top level folder, and now it's under components because it's an acknowledgement that there's really not much of a difference between this is a Blazor component and this is a Blazor component. It's just that they have a page directive that says I'm routable. You can come straight to me.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that particular sample doesn't have our friend the counter. The counter did not make it into the, I don't know. We'll have to look at that another time. So let's take a look at some other things. So we have not yet gotten to talk about stream rendering. So stream rendering is a feature of Blazor, not a render mode. This is where it gets fun. It's got the word render in it.
Right.
But it's not a render mode. It is a feature of Blazor that says without stream rendering, static rendering is more maybe less useful, because what it would be saying is, okay, I'm going to render everything on the server, and then once I send it out, you're done. That's it. And even our friends in other frameworks, even when you choose server-side rendering, still have ways to update the page for the common occurrence of, I want to get you some bits while I go call an API. That is being simulated here, because the weather forecast API does not really call an API, and in the future shows we are actually going to call APIs. But I'm going to make this a little bit longer just so we can see it. I think this is a great question. Stream rendering, a sub feature of server render mode. I think that's perfectly reasonable, because so Romfos, that's absolutely right, because if you select interactivity, then you don't need stream rendering. Like you've chosen a component is going to go ahead and manage interactivity either through the SignalR connection and DOM update, or the Blazor WebAssembly DOM update. What we need stream rendering for is for this use case of, I want to write plain looking C# code that says, if I don't have some bit of data yet because it's null or whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe I've got an API that hands me a left hand or a right hand, and I want to say, if the hand is left, then I want to print out left-handed, and if the hand is right-handed. Like, it doesn't have to be this use case of loading all the time.
Right.
So the use case here is, I don't have a weather forecast because I just got here. And I have a bunch of HTML. So instead, what we're going to render is this. And then when this code runs on the server and finishes, then Blazor will use a fetch request. In fact, what it does is it fires off a fetch request to say, hey, I'm looking for something. And eventually the server responds. It goes like, oh, yep, here it is. And this is what it's going to be. It's going to be this table with the forecast filled in and all rendered out. And so then Blazor, if we look in app.razor, this magical thing here, and I say magical this time because it truly is magician's work. Blazor.web.js is going to be responsible for recognizing that this is a stream rendered page. So therefore, besides the initial static HTML that's come across, there's more coming. So let me make a fetch request to the server. I'm going to get my answer, and then I'm going to update the DOM. And we can watch all of that in action just by running it. I set the delay to be 2.5 seconds, so it would be clearer. As soon as I can. Where did you render? Where did you go? Okay, here we are. I had to find what screen are you on? Here we are. So welcome to your new app. This is totally server rendered. We can look in our F12 tools, and we can look at some sources here. And we are seeing CSS. We are seeing some SCS, some SCSS. Bootstrap is here. Browser link is a VS Visual Studio feature. So that's not really shipping. And then the wonderful Blazor Web.js that's going to do the interactivity. I mean, wow. It's going to do the interactivity when the time comes. But let's see. I want to bring up something on this page. So here we are. When we look at it, again, Visual Studio Browser Link is not part of Blazor. That's a different feature that is designed for, you can make changes on your website, and then Visual Studio says like, well, let me just fix the website instead of you having to stop the app and restart it.
Right.
But what's interesting here is we are just seeing CSS, HTML. If I go to sources, if I go to network, unfortunately, I didn't preserve the log. So let's refresh this. The kind of things that come across here, JS comes across, the browser link enabling stuff comes across. And I go to all, which is what I really wanted to do. But I didn't preserve the log again. That's a bummer. Okay. We're getting CSS, image, script, style sheets, the WebSocket is not for Blazor server. It's for browser link. Yeah. And then also ASP.NET Core browser refresh. I don't think that has anything. I think if I took this out of Visual Studio, we would not see that. In any case, let's head back over. We're going to run weather. It's loading, which it's really just a delay, and then it pops up.
Yeah.
That felt interactive. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you could turn that browser link off, right? I mean, not that we're going to do it and show it, but if you really wanted to not confuse things in Studio versus what's happening on your web.
Yeah, I could turn it off. In fact, maybe I'll try to remember to do that in the future, just to avoid the confusion, right? So what we have is a server-side rendered page that has, it's not really interactivity. It's kind of like what it has is first update, hit the API, come back. That's pretty much it.
And it's, correct me if I have this right or wrong, that's only there because our decision was to do a static, non-interactive web app at this time. If we were doing interactivity, it would be there by default.
Yes, that's right. So I think what we can do is I think I can add a button pretty quickly here, and let's say like this button, because we don't actually care too much about this button, and we use on click, and we say that it's going to call on button. Okay, now what the tooling is telling me is you don't have an on button. I wonder if it's going to help me with this. I thought it would have been pretty cool if it would make it for me, but that's okay. I do kind of want to ask Copilot though.
Yeah. Fix this.
Yeah. What do you think, Copilot? What did you say it was fixed? Gosh.
Just last fix. Yeah.
While it's doing that though, I could come down here Or can I not? Can I not do anything while it's thinking? Maybe I can't. I might have done something wrong. Oh no, now it's thinking. I was probably in a little bit of a, okay, yeah, I can do more stuff. Oh no, I can't. All right, bummer. Actually don't want to get hung up on Copilot though.
No, agreed.
So let's go ahead and say, I think it has to be public. Button. And this isn't really going to do anything. Oh, in fact, I love the suggestion. Oh, I wish I wouldn't have destroyed it. Suggestion was fine with me. Actually, no, let's not do console right line. Let's say public on button. You know what? Console right line is okay. Because this is still going to prove my point.
It'll happen in the browser, right? No.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen at all. That's the key.
Gotcha.
It would have been out at the terminal normally. So
True.
on button method must have a return type. That's true. That is a true statement. Thank you. And what we'll do is we'll set a breakpoint here, and we'll set a breakpoint here just so we can watch both things happen. Is this not ready? Cannot convert. Argument 2 cannot convert from void. Is it not void? I've forgotten already. If I wanted to call a method, I feel like I've already forgotten how to do it. Hold on. I'll remember. I'll remember because, oh wow, that's right. They got rid of the counter. Haha. Let's see, on button.
Go to that other RC1 project you had, right? There's a counter in there.
Yeah, that's true. Visual Studio is taking its time to load up.
Mm-hmm. And does this make a difference because we're not interactive?
Yeah, the key is that what I wanted to show, what I'm hoping to show here, is that we can do this. We can put this code in, and then it's just not going to do anything.
Oh, you don't need the curly brackets at the end.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
On click. And so I appreciate that somebody hit it in chat just as I was looking at the other one. So thank you.
They did?
Oh, I'm guessing, or you said it. One of the two.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's run this. We're actually gonna be able to build. And here we go. Hello world. Switch to weather.
You breakpoint?
Oh, I do have a breakpoint. That's right. And on initialized async, we'll continue through that. So we can see the weather come up. Oh,
you're still.
It's because I hit it like a million times.
Yeah.
And there it is. Okay, so the test button is here.
Yeah.
And when I click on it, no breakpoint. No breakpoint.
Yeah. Okay.
I can swap and swap back, and this time let's get rid of the breakpoint. I think we've proven that it actually is our app. So that works. That works. On initialized works, but just because I have on click in there, it's doing nothing, right? The interactivity doesn't work. It doesn't blow up your app. It just doesn't work. And now why is that important? Because you might be bringing in Razor components that are designed for, they're interactivity ready, so to speak. But so we don't want those components to break.
You're true.
But the interactivity is not going to work. So there are other ways to do similar things here. You can still say server. If you say, oh, I got to get rid of server side. No, that's not true. There's forms interactivity, not interactivity. There's edit form control or just forms. You can submit stuff back to the server. It's a server app. It's like you said earlier, the traditional way that things were done for a very long time. So stream rendering made the key is, this is what the whole point was. Adding the stream rendering attribute, setting it to true, allows you to stay in server-side HTML rendering and have this chance to update with a fetch request based on something that happens during initialization. That's essentially it. other features that I think we will want to look at, just because, you know, we're down to our last few minutes here.
Yeah.
I think as we get into next week and do more updates to our site, another one that's really exciting and doesn't require any interactivity is enhanced navigation. I was hoping to just jump straight to it, so let's find it. Enhanced navigation, because then we got to get out of here. Enhanced navigation and form handling. When you're in static server rendering, what if it's this long page and at the very bottom is a comment form that says like, hey, put your comment here, but you scrolled through the blog post. Then you put your comment in and then you hit send. What happens so many times is that send is a form submit, page request, boom, you're up at the top again. Enhanced navigation takes advantage of what we just talked about using the Blazor WebJS model to basically submit the form, get the answer back, and intercept the page request and say, hold on, we're not going to refresh. We're not going to refresh. Instead, I'm going to update the DOM and keep you right here.
Nice.
I can't wait to show that. We ran out of time today, but I can't wait to show that. And so what I think we're heading towards is we're heading towards our video page where we're going to get a sequence of videos. And I think I'm intentionally going to make it so that it can, like, we'll have a page where it just is way too many, so that way it scrolls. And
Sure.
then you'll go down and you'll maybe like pick something and it'll update it, but we'll keep you right there. So we'll be able to show that off. So yeah, quick one this morning. I hope it was good for the folks watching. I know we focused a lot on server side today. And for me, the reason was because I feel like that is now the foundation of Blazor. That's my opinion. I would love to hear your opinion. So please let us know. Rich and I can't wait to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter. Let us know on Twitter at the Dev Talk Show. Let us know on YouTube in the comments down below what your opinion is about Blazor and how we have one project type now. My opinion is I look at it as server rendering is the foundation by which everything else builds on, including Blazor components, because interactive components are still going back to the server, getting the update. The update's coming through the circuit. And we now have a framework that operates a lot like a lot of the other SPA frameworks and modern web frameworks out there. It gives you the choices and you pick what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, lots to dig into, lots to look at, and let us know what you want to see us dig into from a feature perspective, because we're going to try and hit as many as we can. So
yeah, we just scratched the surface. We'll get this will be how we update the Dev Talk Show website to look through them. Yep. And we can't wait to see you again sometime next week. So everybody have a great weekend, a mishap-free Friday the 13th, which you all will. Yeah. And for Rich Ross, I'm Chris Gomez, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.